All right, so thank you for joining me, Helena. Do you like to say Helena or Helena for your name?
Helena.
I thought so. All right.
Hmm.
I just met another Helena the other day and I had to get that squared. Yeah, so well, I'm am loving speaking to people about their life and the work, the way of life with the work. And so thank you so much for talking about this fabulous thing today that I love so much. And let's go back in time to,
Mm.
what was happening in your life before you ever found the work, like how you found it basically, but what was happening before and then what, where you learned about it and what you did next.
Wow. Well, um, I had been a so-called spiritual seeker for probably 20 years. There was pretty much nothing that I hadn't tried. Um,
Mm,
I had an Indian guru teacher for a number of years. I changed my name. I shaved my head.
wow.
I practiced many kinds of different meditation. I did the whole new age thing. I was channeling spirit guides. I was swimming with the dolphins. I did a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Relate, yeah.
And so someone in my hometown put on a presentation about, the work of Byron Katie. And I thought, well, I'll go check it out. Like I would check out any modality.
Yeah.
Because basically what I was seeking was inner freedom.
Yeah.
That was my whole quest. And I would have some success with some practices, but it never seemed to last somehow. Um, I would have glimpses of some kind of beautiful opening, altered states, all of that. Um, but it didn't last. And it was a lot of effort to stay in that place. So I
Mm,
was still looking. So here was the work of Byron Katie. And it was kind of confusing as it can be at first. I was like, what? I didn't quite get it. And the lady who put on the presentation, she gave me a cassette tape. This was in 2000. So we still had cassette tapes, I was playing it in my car on the way back from this meeting. And it just blew my mind. It was Byron Katie, as we call her, doing the work with this woman who had been tortured by her father. There was a very intense subject.
oh,
And the way Katie spoke to this woman, I was like, this woman is insane. I had to pull over and rewind the tape to really hear what she was saying.
ah,
But there was something about that clicked, and I just knew I had to go see this Byron Katie. So I drove down to the Bay Area a couple of months later, and I met her,
mm,
and I just got on a very deep level. Ah, it starts in here, it's not the dolphins or the spirit guides or the guru that's going to give me anything. And I
uh-huh,
mean, I knew that as a concept, but um,
yeah,
yeah, here was a real path. I felt a real path, a grounded path. um, so yeah.
did you see her when you encountered her?
I
Was it like, was it at an event so you got a chance to go
Yeah.
hear what the work was and she was presenting? Yeah, I know Katie did that a lot, didn't she?
Mhm.
I mean, she still travels a lot,
It
but
was just yeah, she was just bringing different people up on stage doing the work on whatever, on
yeah,
the what was going on in their lives. And yeah.
got it. Yeah.
Mm.
So you left there. You
And well,
Yeah. You left that and you said, okay, I like this.
yeah, and actually, Actually, I'm sorry. I have about a second delay on my internet. I live up in the mountains here, so the
Okay.
internet basically sucks. So there's a
Okay.
little discrepancy.
All right.
Well, I was actually pregnant and about to get married to the love of my life. My 20-year-old son that I had a wonderful relationship with was staying with me. So I thought, yeah, this is great, but I don't really need it right now because I was so happy. I was in such a good place in my life.
Mm.
And about 13 months after my daughter was born in 2001, my oldest son, or my son, Yoon, overdosed on heroin and
Oh.
left his body. And
Mm.
then I was in pain.
Mm.
I was sitting in the worst darkness I had ever encountered in my life. Um,
Wow.
I experienced very deep shame that I didn't realize my own son was doing heavy drugs. I, uh,
Mm.
as any parent or anyone who's lost someone, and I know everyone has, the shock, the grief, it was just agonizing. So then I thought, well, let's try this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
See if it works.
Mm-hmm.
And it did.
Wow.
Um, there were so many painful concepts and thoughts in my mind. My mind was just like on fire, and I'd be on all fours in front of my toilet just throwing up because I felt such guilt and such shame that because I had been a spiritual teacher for many years. I had retreats all over the place and stuff, and that I had lost a son and to drugs. So the work became a ladder. I took each painful concept, my son shouldn't have died. I should have known what was going on. Each concept questioned became like a little ladder, little step on the ladder out of this extreme darkness.
Mm.
And without the story, the process of my son's body disappearing and him, I don't know, going somewhere, that process was really beautiful.
Wow.
It was the deepest experience of love I had ever had. So the work helped me, brought me into that beautiful process of just opening and opening and opening. And I experienced my son's consciousness just expanding out, and I could travel with him
Wow.
because of the work.
Wow.
Because the inquiry helped me to let go of story after story. And what's left, as you know,
Yeah.
is reality. And reality is always kind. And I can honestly today say I'm actually grateful that my son left his body.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
so yeah, I tested the work in the worst fire, and it held.
Yeah.
So from that point on, this was, almost 20 years ago now, I've been pretty much married to this practice because I have
Yeah.
seen it hold
Yeah.
hold me um, oh,
Yeah.
in the worst circumstances ever. So
Did you
mm,
find it was that you could sit, you said, I'm going to try to do the work, or I'm going to do the work and see if it works in the midst of this dark turmoil. And could you find yourself, maybe when there's nothing left to lose, that's what I sometimes find, but sometimes, uh, depending on the situation, early on in my work, I would have a hard time staying still enough by myself to like follow, like I almost be where am I in the process, or how to look at who you'd be without the thought. But did you find yourself that you could, when you found those concepts, were you doing it by yourself? Were you writing down the concepts and
Mm.
questioning?
Yeah.
Sweet. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't even any certified facilitators back then, and I don't believe there was a helpline, and I didn't even really know anyone, and I had no energy to try to find anyone. So it was just me, and well, my daughter was 13 months, so we were like two toddlers crawling around on the floor. It was just me.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Yeah.
And I think what you said, because I had nothing left to lose, you know, there was nothing left to hold on to. So I didn't have any identity left to protect. So I feel like I could really dive into each question. Each question took me on a journey inside. And
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was already so cracked,
Yeah.
cracked up,
Yeah.
cracked open. So, yeah.
Beautiful. No, I always am so touched when people have that experience. Um, it's so touching, beautiful. I found that the feel of that didn't happen for me until I was sitting in the school for the work. And I kind of went, oh.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, the thing that I was doing the work on was the death of my father, which I always thought was way too early and way too soon. And I missed him so much for all
Mm-hmm.
these years, and it was also on death.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just even doing the work on my father died, like you just said. He died. Is that true? I,
Yeah.
was amazing to realize he was with me all those years, ever since he died, you know, uh,
Mm-hmm.
in my own mind and my own heart. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, then,
Yeah. And I feel
yeah.
without this story, the only thing that was left after a while was, I had a beautiful son in a body, and I still have a beautiful son, and he's so alive, and still to this day, he's so alive, in my heart, in my mind, in our family. We always talk about him, and yeah, so
Sweet. Yeah.
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 Mhm.
Yeah. Well, then, so what happened next? When did you do further work with Katie? Because I know you went to the school at some point.
Yeah, so about a year after this, 2002, I did my first school.
Was it in Barcelona?
Yeah, and that was, no, in Brussels, in Belgium.
Oh, it was. Oh, wow. Cool. Yeah.
Because I was in Sweden at the time. I lived outside Stockholm at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and well, I had taken quite a few years off. I was sort of in retreat mode after my son left, and I had a little daughter. So I was mostly just being a mom and just using the work for myself. Um, so I would say, like, maybe 5, 6, 7 years after that, I started sharing it with people, with
Mm.
clients, and I started having a little bit of retreats again. And then one day, I can't remember why, but I went on the website and there was like, oh, there's a certification program. Oh, well, I guess I should do that. I mean, I know how to do the work. So I just clicked and registered, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
Uh-huh.
Um, because, as you know, the certification program worked even deeper on myself, especially around facilitating other people.
Mm.
And I had a bit of a spiritual teacher ego persona. I had written several best-selling books in Swedish, traveled around a lot, and a lot of lectures, hundreds of people. I would answer any question.
Wow.
So the certification program really crushed slowly, gently, but it crushed all of that. And
Uh, hmm.
I just love how it brought me to a place that I have nothing to teach.
Mm.
Such a relief.
Oh my
I
God.
have nothing to teach, and um, I'm simply here to ask some questions, and whatever happens, that that's the business of the client.
Yeah.
Retreat participant. It's not my doing, and it's not by my power or that I have some special spiritual vibration that's going to lift them up.
Yes.
um, so
Wow.
then I felt like, because that was sort of the last question left for me, was like, well, this has been extremely powerful for me. It basically transformed my whole life. But then when I went out to share it with other people, I had this old teacher persona come in, and it didn't work. So the certification program really helped me to clear all that out and to
Ah.
see
Hmm.
that I don't know. There's no words left, but anyway, I'm just here to ask you some questions, and
Yeah.
feel free to
Yeah.
answer if
Yeah.
you would like. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. So beautiful. I remember having my first something or other, like maybe a day in my house or something, and so nervous and thinking, oh my God, like um I obviously have the thing running, that uh, people need to have a good time. They need to get something. I need, and just the
Mm.
anxiousness about, you can kind of recognize, how would I do that if I even knew how? I don't know. Um, but I was so nervous. I went to the mirror in my room and I saw that the shirt I had on had huge armpit stains, like sweating. I went, oh my God, Grace,
Mm-hmm.
quick wrote down, because it was somebody was at the door helping people come in, and I still had 15 minutes before we were starting, and I wrote down what I was thinking, and I also changed my shirt immediately. And but I wrote down those kinds of things, like, people have to have a good time, or they or an awareness, they need to get something from this. And it was so good to just like pause for a moment. And I remembered Katie actually saying, just trust the work, trust the work,
Mm-hmm.
trust the work.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't about me. So I still get excited before a retreat, but it's nothing like the first ones. So I understand that kind of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I totally recognize the arm sweat, and I used to try to hide it before the work, and now, after questioning, I shouldn't get so sweaty when I'm teaching, and realizing, well, I should, because I am. I just have a good time bringing tons of clothing when I teach somewhere, and I just change them,
Right.
and
Exactly.
there's no story to it, so it's
Yeah.
fun. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, another area where I have really used the work was in 2010. So here's another intense story. I was diagnosed with HIV, and to my big shock. Um,
Yeah.
and so again, I was sitting in a pretty dark hole. I had a lot of fear and a lot of images in my mind of myself dying in AIDS, being sick the rest of my life. My daughter growing up without me. So again, I used to work. I got that diagnosis. Was the first thing I did. Drove home.
Oh my God.
I had HIV. Is it true? And luckily, I was in the certification program when I got my diagnosis. So I called my homework partner, my mentor. And so I got a lot of support, but that was very, very scary to get that diagnosis. And prior to the diagnosis, I had been sick for 2 years.
Without knowing what it was.
Not knowing what it was. And
got it.
And no doctor could figure out what it was. I went through the cancer tests and I went through all of that because when you have HIV, your lymph nodes start swelling up. So it starts in your neck. So I had these giant golf balls in my neck, and then it slowly spread through the whole lymphatic system. It's a classic HIV symptom, but I had no idea. And where I live, it's a pretty white area, middle class. So HIV is not very common here. So the doctors here had no idea either. And I got more and more tired, exhausted. I would wake up just going, oh God, when can I go back to sleep?
Wow.
And then I would have blackouts. If I laid down to take a nap, I could be out for up to 8 hours if no one woke me up.
Wow.
And so something mysterious was taking over my body and no one could tell me what it was.
Yeah.
And I didn't know. And so to use the work every day during that time was so powerful. Even to question, I'm exhausted, is that true? And without the story, I was just soft. I was just flowing into the kitchen. And yes, I could still make a school lunch for my daughter. I could do what I needed to do. It just went in slow motion. And I was just a bit soft and vulnerable. So the practice really helped me throughout my long illness. And then when I got the diagnosis, I mean, part of it was a big relief because then I knew what was going on. But that brought another layer of fears, of course. What's going to happen now? What's it going to do to my body? And then you have to take medication. And I basically never taking anything stronger than Tylenol. So I was totally freaked out that I was going to take some kind of drugs produced by the pharmaceutical industry. Right. So I didn't. For months, I didn't. I was going to heal the HIV naturally, you know. Oh, boy. I did anything and everything. And, well, it just got worse and worse. The HIV virus was just taking over my body. And finally, my doctor said, well, I have to declare you at AIDS level now, Helena. Wow. So that set off a little bell in my head. And I went, oh, my God. So I had to question my thoughts about taking the medications. I did that for a week, and I put the medication bottles on a book from Katie, you know, with some crystals to raise the vibration. Because I had so many fears about it. But anyway, I started taking the medication, and I have had 0 side effects. Wow. And within 2-3 weeks, I was back to being normal or being healthy the way I had been before all this started. And I had forgotten what it was like to actually have energy to do something. So I am so grateful now to take my medication in love and peace and gratitude. And I made peace with the pharmaceutical industry. And, you know, I still do everything I can. I do my yoga and my juicing and healthy diet and all that to support my immune system, of course. So it became, a joining of those two paths.
Yeah.
And so,
You know what I love about
so
your
that,
story, well, is sometimes people bring up this idea about being passive. Like, if I do the work, then I just won't, like, for example, oh, if I do the work before I ever know there's a diagnosis, like those 2 years that you had when you were suffering and you know something's happening.
mhm,
And if I do the work and say, I'm exhausted, is it true? Well, not 100%. And then that people will think, well, then I'll just be very passive and I won't even go to the doctor because I'll just be so accepting. And I love your sharing because I recognize that kind of whatever you'd call it, like either an argument or a concern or something um, that I noticed along the way for myself. And I love your story because it's being with what is in the moment, and still, obviously you're still going to a doctor, you're still wondering, it's like just the right action comes out of it. And then this idea with the medication, you just know to take it at some point, which is very,
mhm.
very sweet. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel after I question my stressful thoughts in that open space, I know what to do. And in my experience, and it has never been, well, whatever, I'll just lay around until I die. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. That could have been an option.
Yes.
But
Right.
I find it has opposite effect. I'm freed up to take the right action. It comes to me what to do. I'll make the phone call, I'll send the email or whatever it is.
Yeah. Same.
And I, I received a text from the man who had been my lover and who said, we need to talk. And he had just been diagnosed. So when he said that he had it, and I went, oh, that must be what's going on. But I didn't just sit around on my couch then. I went to get tested.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I feel the work cleared me up to take action in a much better way.
Got it. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. What a journey. So that's powerful. So that was 2010.
Yeah.
Still almost,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah. So
yeah.
it it took me some years to work through all my own thoughts and my shame around getting HIV and coming out as HIV positive in my community. What are people going to think was another big layer. The spiritual teacher, now I'm like, oh, I'm HIV positive. So
Yeah.
it took me some years. But I received so much kindness and so much support.
Mm.
Um, there are so many programs. There are special clinics for people with HIV. I've just been absolutely so touched by all the support that's available and all the beautiful, beautiful people that I met that are also HIV positive.
Yeah.
So after a while, I started feeling like I've gotten so much I would love to give back. So I started sharing the work for free in support circles with people who have HIV, and it's just been mind blowing to see because there's many different groups of people nowadays that have. There's some people like me who sort of by accident happened,
Uh-huh.
but then there's a lot of there's homeless people, there's drug users, there's a big Black Mexican population with the HIV, the whole LGBT community. So
Mm-hmm.
there's so many different communities. And so when I first started having these circles, there'd be like very different people in this circle looking at each other like, well, but then we write the sentence, I have HIV, and that means, and their list of thoughts, of meanings, was always the same.
Yeah.
Whether they were gay or black or a white lady like me, or there were some widows in their 70s whose husband had died. After the death of their husband, they found out that they had HIV and that their husband was secretly gay. So, you know,
Yeah.
all these
Yeah.
journeys of life, but everyone had very similar thoughts, what it means to have HIV. And I love how the work creates instant intimacy in a group like that.
Yeah.
So when people were reading their top 3 thoughts on their list, everybody's nodding, everybody becomes one community, people are hugging, some people are crying.
Oh,
So it's such a beautiful way of connecting people too.
yeah. That's
Um,
so
yeah.
beautiful.
So that's one of my favorite classes now is making peace with disease.
Oh, that's wonderful. I don't think I knew you taught that class.
Yeah.
Absolutely fabulous.
Wow. Really? Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
I did a presentation about it at the ITW, the Institute for the Work convention, a few years back. And Bethany Webb, another certified facilitator, came up to me and said, I have cancer and I went through a very similar journey like you did. So do you want to do this together? And I said, sure. So Bethany and I have, we've been sharing this work online now for 2 years. So we do an 8-week class online and it's for people with any kind of condition because we realized it's a very similar journey. The mental stress
Yeah.
that a disease, a chronic condition, whether it's cancer, HIV, chronic fatigue, all of these, ME, MS,
Yeah.
all those things.
Yeah.
Um,
That's beautiful.
it brings on very similar stress. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. So you'll afterwards we'll have the links to so people can go look and see your offering on your class because I think that's wonderful. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Mm.
I had the
Yeah. Thank
same.
you.
It is. I had the same thing. I had a cancer diagnosis in 2006, and while it wasn't, it was resolved fairly quickly, you know, like what the steps are, and then you do surgery, and then this, and then oh, now it's gone. And but I remember sitting in the, I did the work on this because it was such a profound moment. I had gone into the doctor, and I had a like this bump on my leg that was getting bigger over a whole year. You know, it's getting bigger, and so
Mhm.
she had said, yeah, we'll biopsy this, we'll biopsy. And I had gone away where they do the biopsy and then, you know, had like 4 stitches, and I came back and you have to come back and get the stitches out. And then she said, well, you get dressed and I'm going to leave the room and you can get dressed and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the biopsy results. And the way she said it, she didn't even say anything, but the
Mhm.
way,
Mhm.
which was I just suddenly, like I had this huge flood of adrenaline, like that went through my system, and said, oh, it's cancer. You know, when she came back, I mean, I was just shaking, like getting myself back dressed again, and watching that, part of me watching it too, like noticing, look at that, you're really alarmed, but it was like it just meant I'm gonna die. I'm gonna suffer and die, and that's what's gonna happen.
Mm.
I'm terrified of that. I mean, that was just what was amazing. I'm so terrified. I'm so terrified. I don't think I really realized how, even though I did that death on my father in the first school I ever went to, I don't think I realized I'm terrified of death. Or my thoughts about death. How can I know I'm terrified of death when I haven't
Mhm.
actually died? But yeah, it was such an amazing worksheet to go home and write the worksheet right then about that moment. And that's the one I went back to over and over again. I just stayed with the same moment of her saying, okay, why don't you get dressed and then we'll discuss. Like I heard this voice and her doing that over and over because that's the moment.
Mhm.
And I would say, I'm going to die. Is it true? Oh my gosh. And then lots of other thoughts about cancer. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Having to repeat them, the work on them. That's very helpful.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so sweet. I think that's one profound thing I got from you. I, maybe it was at the convention or something, but you were sharing that when you noticed a very frightening thought, like I have HIV, and you just did it. Went through the process of the 4 questions. Is it true? How do you react? Who would I be without it? Find a turnaround. And then you would start over again the next day and do it again. Do I remember that correctly?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for some reason, it just came to me. I decided I'm going to do a mental cleanse every day, after I got my diagnosis. So I would question the thought, I have HIV. I was going to question that every day for 30 days, I had decided. And at first, I felt really stuck in the turnaround.
Mm.
I don't have HIV. I'm like, well, it sure seems like I do. I had
Uh-huh.
2 different lab results here saying it, and the doctor saying it. I got the symptoms. So I was a bit stuck for a few days.
Mm-hmm.
But then it began to open up, and I realized that me, Helena, whatever makes me who I am, is not infected by HIV. My love for my daughter does not have HIV. My inquiry doesn't have HIV. My meditation is not infected. My morning walk, when I look at the trees, doesn't have HIV. So I found there was no place that made up this Helena. There was no HIV.
Wow.
And I was just like, wow, this is so amazing.
Yeah.
And I kept going, and it opened up to even bigger, the self, the true self, your essence, your soul, whatever you want to call it. My soul does not have HIV,
Yeah.
never will, and never had. It's not possible. It's simply not possible for my true essence, or whatever you want to call it, to have HIV or anything else for that matter. So this heavy burden that had been on me just lifted. And I was laughing at the thought, I have HIV, and I still do. I mean, I say it as a
Yes.
figure of speech, I'm HIV positive. But there's no way I have HIV. I mean, I know that now. It
Yeah.
just, it's not happening.
Yeah.
There is a virus apparently in this body, and it needs medications. Otherwise, the body gets sick. But that's a completely different thing.
Yeah.
It's not I have HIV or cancer.
Yes.
I am free, and there's something going on with the body, and I can take care of that.
Yeah. Fantastic.
So yeah.
Oh, I love that. It's just such an inspiring example of allowing it all to take the time it takes too, that you don't just do the work really fast while you're driving your car and jump to the turnarounds. You sometimes have to wait to see I've had turnarounds that have come to me a month later, like, oh my God, right. It's like suddenly here's a turnaround.
Mm.
Oh, so I just find that's very important in the work, the slowing down, just letting it take its course, you know? Yeah, so sweet. Mm,
Yeah. And sometimes even years after I've done a piece of work, something will,
yeah,
oh, trickle down.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's yeah,
And also sometimes people say, well, you know, I did the work on that and it didn't work. um,
yeah,
and so for me, coming back and maybe question the same thoughts a lot, because some of them are very repetitive. I mean, mind is repetitive, and some thoughts I've been believing and holding on to for many, many years. So my list of proof is so long.
yeah,
So it's really good to go back and take that time and question it again. And if I can't find an example of a turnaround, like, you know, I don't have HIV, I really was stuck. I was like, well, maybe they find a cure in the future. So maybe in the future I won't have it, you
right.
know. But just sitting with that and then see what happens. That's the practice, you know,
Yeah,
that the yoga practice for the mind. Just sit with it, turn around and open to it. And I
yeah,
was like, wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So great. What would you say? I have one more question for you before we're done. I get this question a lot that people want to do the work on themselves, like some quality, like for example, I'm too impatient or I'm too something. There's something wrong with me. Um, and we hear from Katie
Mm-hmm.
the invitation to look at the world and see what you're afraid of or what disturbs you that's out there because it's hard. Just what's been your experience around that? And I mean, anything to share about the work in that particular way? That question people have a lot.
Mm. Mm. Um, yeah, I have done the work on my self-critical thoughts a lot. Um, because that's what was really, really bothering me. I mean, I have had these two big dramatic events around my son's death and HIV, but like in my life outside of those events, I had a lot of self-critical thoughts. So I've done the work on those a lot. And for me, that has been very beautiful, very powerful.
Mm,
Um, I can see that there is like a fine line of balance. So let's say you do the work on a self-critical thought. I'm too impatient. You
mhm.
know, I'm not too impatient. I am perfect as I am, or whatever you come up with for a turnaround. There's a fine line of kind of boosting the ego
Mm,
versus looking at real life actual examples, like grounded in real life. So I
uh-huh.
don't know if that's um, why Katie at times have been saying do the work on others first.
Mhm.
Because like before the work, I would do affirmations. You
Uh-huh.
know, there's something wrong with me would be, I'm perfect the way I am. I'm perfect the way I am.
Yeah.
And but without the four questions, it wasn't grounded. So it was like this sugar coating or like
Mhm.
this feel good cover up that I would have to repeat again and again, you know.
Sure.
And so I can see, like in the work, if you question the thought, there's something wrong with me, and then you come to the turnaround, there's nothing wrong with me. I am perfect the way I am. Um, if you don't stay really grounded in the examples, maybe you would kind of go off on a tangent and sort of building up the ego identity again.
Uh, sure.
So I can notice that. Um,
I wonder if it also could,
and so I would,
well, I like how you said, even with disease, and it means, like, sometimes this is what, when somebody feels very, very insistent, of course we do it. They want to do the work on their own self-critical thoughts. And definitely we'll go there. And it's sometimes very helpful to say, like, what does it mean? Why is this a bad quality? What's wrong with this? What's the worst that could happen if you keep being impatient for the rest of
Mm-hmm.
your life? Because then you kind of see the fear
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
fear underneath this quality. It's not, or yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and I found that all of us have built up an identity based on these self-critical core beliefs. Little bit different version for each person, but basically there's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough. I don't deserve dot 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 whatever it is. I found that most people carry those at their core, and to bring those out into the light and question them has been totally transformative for me.
oh, very sweet. Love that.
And it's Yeah. And it's different than when I was writing the affirmations
Yeah,
and like, oh, I'm so great. I'm so great. I'm the best. Oh yeah, I'm so awesome. It's more when I did inquiry on the self-critical thoughts and these layers were removed, it became much more of a witnessing of this, that it's called Helena.
yeah,
um, so it became more of noticing, like, oh, she did that, or she did this, or oh, she's upset right now, or oh, she's happy right now. It's like I'm along for the ride much more. It's like, oh, okay, noticing what is going on and having way more fun with it. And when people give me some feedback that's less than positive or not spiritual, I don't crumble up, like I used to. I can receive it, I can hear it.
yeah, yeah. Awesome. So great. Well, thank you so much. It's just it's so inspiring. It's inspiring for me. I love hearing what it's like to have it as a practice. It's like as a energy or a practice over time. Like, it doesn't necessarily happen in one little moments all added up together, but yeah, just very, very inspiring to hear of your journey, and just that you're just drawn to it over and over again. I certainly am too. I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Wonderful. And thank you for doing your work. Where do you live now? Not that that matters if you're offering things online, but do you live in California or do you live in Sweden?
I live in, no, I live in California. Yeah, I
Okay.
live up in the mountains in California, in a little place called Nevada City.
Uh-huh.
And yeah. Mhm.
Good. That's great. You do retreats? Do you do live retreats there?
Occasionally, I do them up at the hot springs, Sierraville Hot Springs.
Ah,
But most of my work is online.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. It just ended up being that way. It's easy for me. I can stay at my house. I don't have to go
Yeah.
travel.
Yeah.
And people from all over the world can join. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I find that too. It's an amazing, amazing world, isn't it? They can do these things online.
Mm-hmm.
All do the work together
Mm-hmm.
with our bodies here, but our minds working, doing the work. It's great. Yeah.
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 Thank you, my dear. So sweet to meet you, be with you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Just love it. I look forward to
Yeah, wonderful.
the future. Whenever we meet again, I look forward to that.
Yeah, yeah.
All
Well,
right.
thank you for doing this, Grace. This is beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye. Thank you.
Bye bye.